Target 7294, check it out. I wrote that on the back of this paper. I know that it's flipped right now, but it says, what is under the meadow at the location these men are standing? What were these men doing there and why? And I wrote that on the back of a photograph of this location called Mount Wilson Ranch in Nevada. And up there in the lower meadow in front of that old 1800s settler's cabin is none other than Bob Bigelow, Jaques Vallee, Hal Puthoff, Dr. Tim Rhein, Colm Kelleher, and the original NIDS team that ended up at Skinwalker Ranch, and then is also behind all of the UFO metamaterial research with To the Stars Academy with Tom DeLonge.
The face that was at the end of that tunnel that booted me out looked like...
Bro, Target 7294. On the back of a photograph, I put that 4-digit number and I sent that blind to my friend here as a remote viewing target. And he is doing a multi-part series where at the beginning, he was convinced that I had him remote viewing a petroglyph symbol at a specific location, but I gave him this number 7294 as a blind target. So I don't know if this guy has gone and if he's looked at my YouTube channel and other content or whatever and pieced together this entire story, and I don't want to ruin it all for him, but I'm telling you, all I gave him was a 4-digit number, 7294, and I told him that it was an interesting location I wanted him to remote view, and now he's doing this whole series. And if you've been following any of my research or any of my work about a specific location, you'll know how much this lines up. And I'll tell you this much, how much it lines up. I've been remote viewing this, going to petroglyph sites and looking at the spiral symbol and remote viewing them and following them. And 2 years ago, I drew almost the exact same stuff that you're drawing right now in some of my books before I even knew that this place existed. So we probably should do like a whole conversation, or maybe we should do an interview and record it, and then we'll publish the findings of all this, because I think it's pretty interesting, man. So here's some of my drawings of similar dreams, visions, and experiences of the same stuff. So here's the white boxes that you talked about in your other video. Here's some of these gateways and doorways with coding on it. This is the actual remote viewing stuff that I was doing. Here's the dates when I was doing it. So I got going down into a hole in the mountain, that there's a tunnel going down, a natural entrance carved out farther. So it's like natural caves from the ancient past, and then they're carved out more. I have this from an overhead view, like it's on an edge that goes down, and then there's a person, like it goes up a ridge. This all fits. And then here's going into a tunnel that's blocked, and there's like energy flowing, crystals and energy at the bottom of a cave. Here's our spiral, energy moving up. It's all esoteric, like portal stuff, like swooshing movements. Here's this whole white glowing, basically like a smooth metallic aluminum flying UFO orb thing. And then here's a person, and this is like it comes up out of the ground and people witness it. And there's trees around, boom, and this is floating around it. Let's see, so here's a further out scene. This is observation, contact, and return. A flight path, like it comes down and goes up, and then here's a person, the witness, come outside. I'm dreaming. What am I dreaming this? This is the object up close. It's very much like a toroidal field, like a DNA strand in the middle with all this energy, humming sound, vibration. I knew I was drawing all of this way before large structure carved used as a building, historical, ancient, elevated landscape. So this is me going off of my numbers. Same as you. Past, abandoned, hidden place of hidden power, esoteric, mystical energy, sacred geometry, Merkaba. Right? So if you know, when you finally see what the actual target is, ritual site, esoteric magic, energy harness, underground, temple underground, people using the water or energy in the tunnels. So you drew a whole thing about the water dropping down in the tunnel system. All that matches. Wait till you see what this place is. See, I've been remote viewing this for a long, long time. What's underground here, bro? Look at that one. Crystal Rainbow Bridge. Alternate versions of yourself as a child, now and in the future, going through gateways of time. Cool stuff, man.
The beings, they almost feel like messengers. Their mind works different than my mind. Their mind is like every possible point, starting from the point of origin outward. The gap between are the firings of energy, and they're just random impulses scattered all around the sphere. There's something in it that pulls me like a gravity change. Like green, there's a white sort of, I'm moving through like a white squarish tunnel. If I'm intruding, I will happily leave. I'm done. All done. Okay, I am leaving. The face that was at the end of that tunnel that booted me out looked like this, and its skin was kind of like the skin on E.T. It was brown and kind of slick. The second that it decided, there was like a wall of just energy that just zoomed right into me, and I was out. It kicked me the hell out. Carl, where did you send me? Target number 7294. Across. Down. Across. Down. Hard. Target number 7294. Down. Across. Turning back. Down. Across. Down. 'Dry. Target 7294. Down. Across. Down. Across. Down. Across. Natural. 7294. Down. Cross. Down. Cross. Down. Over. Loop back. Down. Cross. Down. Water. 7294. Across. Down. Looping back. Across. Down. Across. Down. Straw. Like grass straw. Target 7294. Listening. Echo. Stream. Fire crackling in my brakes column. Yeah, there's a huge echo. Very quiet. 7294 touch. Airy, open. Stage 2. Audio. Wind. Quiet. Audio target 7294. Slight echo. Target 7294 touch. Spiky. Or sharp. Target 7294 touch. So I get a feeling like every 20 feet or so, a natural growth, like trees or cactus, touch, target 7294. Yeah, there's not much. It's very open, kind of airy space. Temperature of target 7294. Hot. Visuals. Boulder. Large. Orange. Natural. Sunlight. Sun. Sunset. Like a very broad, open horizon. You can see everything. Panoramic view, that's the word. AOL desert. Blue. Red. Green. Where are all these colors coming from? Like I'm seeing like kind of like a mandala of colors. It reminds me of those sand mandalas that Buddhist monks create on the floor, like art. Man-made. So we're going to pause that for now. Target 7294 taste. Dusty. Yeah, just dirt. Decay. 7294 decay, clarify. Like old wood, AOL old wood, like decaying wood. I'm not getting much else for smells. Target 7294 energies. What kinds of energies are here? Light. Is this natural light or intelligently made? Okay, intelligently made light. Artificial light would be another word. What other energies? I feel like there's some water here, but nothing more than a stream or something like that. I'm not feeling much here. It's very quiet. It's very gentle. I'm going to pause on energies into dimensionals. Target 7294 dimensionals. Like a steep drop. Target 7294 dimensionals. AOL sheer cliff. Like a sheer cliff face. What other dimensionals? Yeah, like a kind of a canyon. My own feelings. How do I feel about this space? I really like it. It's very peaceful, quiet, natural, old. I don't know, AOL windswept. Don't know what that means. How else do I feel here? Like I could just sit here all day. Long periods of rest. So far I'm getting a lot of feelings like I'm almost like camping in the desert beside a sheer, tall cliff wall with the sun hitting it and lighting it up. I don't want to stop looking at the pretty light because the dirt is sort of orange colored with patches of shadow here and there from the texture on the rock. And as the sun moves, here, let me move the sun. It changes on the rock face. It's really beautiful. Artwork, AOL artwork. So we're going to jump into stage 3 and do some visuals. Almost getting like interwoven threads or strands, roots together, but like this batch of woven fabric or strands goes in a shape. Color, what color? So far, just sort of like a golden straw color on the individual strands. Target 7294. So I keep getting this recurring visual. It's sort of like out of a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoon of this big, sort of squarish block of orange stone resting high atop a cliff, kinda, and it's like wanting to tip over. It's like here's like this cliff face or something, and it's like barely up there. It's just perched up there, and it's this big orange block. Orange block. Target 7294. Visual. So I feel like I'm in the bottom of a canyon now. It's very flat, maybe a little small kind of stream running through it. Desert, scrub brush, stones here and there. But I'm at the base of this canyon and it's dry. Oh, it's a riverbed, but it's dry, so the dirt is very, you can reach it and play with it and make it dusty, flower-like. Dry riverbed. AOL dry riverbed. It's like these little squiggles that are vertical, going up and down. Poking up out of the sand or out of the riverbed. And they're like curly. Kind of remind me of like bamboo, or like when I went to a survival school in Boulder, Utah, and there were these like green kind of vines that grew everywhere in old dry riverbeds, and they had these segmented kind of sections that were move to optimum location to observe. Historical focal point of target. Target 7294. Seeing a circular shape, vertical, like on a wall. Circular. Its perimeter is dotted, like the outline of it is dotted, but it's not quite a solid circular shape. It's like dots that connect it. It's like chipped out sections of rock. There's more of them within the inner part, but I can't quite get their orientation. I feel like they're numerous. That's why I'm having a hard time locking in on anyone in particular. I'm just going to draw what I'm seeing and try less to make sense of it. Sort of a silhouette of like the hair of a like a body, like a long-haired person. But there's something about this part of it right here that reminds me of like stars, like shooting stars. Shooting stars. It's going to make no sense, but it's as if this top part of the head where these little lines are is actually something about stars, shooting stars, like, you know, in the art. Okay, I feel like, oh, is this the squiggles from before? There are these alive beings with these strange, is this hair? It's like it's hair, but it's like it's made of light. Break, AOL, hair, light. So I get the impression it feels like, so there's more than one, there's multiple, and the hair is red and white. Like there's a strand, like let's say this is a strand that's all red. Like each strand is sort of a solid color, and then there's like a strand that's white. They're thick, almost like dreadlocks. But the face that's in the middle is not human. This almost, it feels like something that is doing its best to look like something relatable. But the red and the white are not. It's light. It's like, yeah, it's like light coming off from the being, like a red and white light, and then there's like a sort of central violet, very small light color at the top of the head. Wow, give me a second. Target 7294. Where's the, oh, there's green. I'm just going to put a star for green. I'm a terrible artist. Green light sort of in the chest area. I feel like this is something that can transition between looking like this, or it can just be pure light, or it can and I see them approaching kind of slowly. One here, one here, one here. But the main one of focus is the one on the left. It's the closest one to me. Target 7294. I just gotta these eyes. Anyway, this one on the left, as it approaches, it's like it's holding something, and I'm looking at its hands, and there's something it's presenting to me, like a light. It's like a colored light, like a golden, kind of golden light. It's very beautiful, very pleasing to look at. It's in its hands, and I'm looking at it. There's no words. It's just in that moment when I see this color, I feel at peace. Very comforted by this, very calmed by it. So in my mind, I feel like I'm seeing what the memory maker would have said are like medicine people, holy, I mean, just spirits basically doing their best to look earthly. Yeah. And one more thing about my interaction with them, it doesn't feel scary. It just feels like I'm kind of meeting with a sort of like an owner, like they're the owners of this land, they're the owners of this space, and I'm just here sort of in their garden, you know, like they're just tending and observing. They're quite neutral. So target 7294, the original tasking was that there were 2 questions by the tasker. So I'm going to put Q1 for question 1. And I'm going to let whatever floods in be an answer to that question. Process. Cycle. Process, cycle. Observant. Delicate balance. Observant still, observant. There's something about observant with light, observant. There's a connection between that word and that like golden colored light in the being's hands, observant. Target 7294, answer to question 1. Embodying. Consciousness. Old. Farming. Farming. Gathering. I don't even know what this word means, but admonishment. Monish. I'm going to have to look that one up later. Intercellular. Communication. God only knows what that means. All right, target 7294, question 1. Is there more? Nature. Cycles or cyclical. I'm being shown in my mind, you know, like a stalk of wheat that grows and then dies. Grows and then dies, grows and then just dies. And every time that happens, the cycle of it is observed by neutral beings who simply want the wheat to grow as best as possible. There's like a timelessness here. Timelessness, repeating. Does this answer the question? Am I complete in answering the question? Revere the process / revere the cycles. Okay. Target 7294, question 2. Being seen like a very long, almost like a well, and I'm following a drop of water that drops down it, just goes on and on and on, like a cavern. And this cycle, previously stated, ends in the amount of time that it would take for this huge space to eventually fill up all the way with one drop of water at a time. So this is like an analogy, something that takes a very long time. But there's no rush. It's timeless, and it's a process. Okay, but I feel like I'm bleeding into question 1. Let's stay on question 2. Target 7294, answer to question 2. This is very existential. I'm being shown the experience itself as a drop of water falling is all that matters. It doesn't matter how long it takes for this to fill up. It only matters the experience of each drop that falls into it and adds to the overall pool of drops. I don't know what that means, but target 7294, answer to question 2. Being shown multiple columns in a kind of a spiral shape. Graduation. So I'm being shown target 7294, answer to question 2. White columns. But they're in like a, like looking from top down, they're in an interesting, like, orientation. White columns. Their orientation is intentional. And I'm seeing as light moves, the shadows of them move, indicating some difference, some value that changes. Interesting. I almost feel like these aren't real, like they're thought forms, each of these columns, and each one marks something important. You know, like if you were an artist and you were trying to explain the concept of eons and millennia of time, and you could mark off each eon as one white column and say that from different perspectives, pretending like you're on the ground and you're looking through these columns, that each one offers a different perspective on something of great importance related to consciousness. And that each of these columns is like a marker in the eons of time of the evolution or non-evolution of this consciousness. Yeah, I'm almost seeing them like I'm out in space and there's stars everywhere and there's just these white columns floating in space, but they're all erect, vertical. They don't follow a straight line. And each sequential one after is higher, like up a little bit. Interesting. Focus on the white column. What does it represent? It's like packets of information. But again, I'm having a hard time differentiating between something tangible and like a thought for what this represents, the white column. But I feel like absolutely everything could be contained in each one of these. Like you wouldn't need more than one, but there's multiple of them. This is really weird, but I almost feel like I'm looking at like the entire universe in a microscope slide. Like, here's your microscope slide, right? You remember in biology and you slide it in the microscope and the little light is on above it and you look through the magnifying glass. Well, I feel like on just a tiny little slide is like the whole universe, and that's what each of these white columns represents. Like it's every variation that occurred during that eon of time for that space of time. And it's like a packet of information. All of that is data. And it's just a slice of that. And each of these columns is totally different. Like you can have it begin the same way, but it'll never unfold the same way. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like it's a function, but mathematically it never ends up equaling the same thing each time that you play it out. I don't know what that means, but that's what's here. This is way out there, but I feel like as I'm admiring these columns, like walking through them slowly, I'm slowly taking in the beauty of the difference between each one. It fulfills me somehow. Man, this is out there. Like I'm enjoying the fact that each one started the same way, but they always end differently. It's like art to me. Like I feel like I'm walking through, not literally an art gallery, but the same feeling you'd get if you really admired artists. You know, if you had so for example, here's a great example, and I'm going to change camera angles for a second. So with each of these columns, it's as if, like, here's a concept to answer your second question. What if you had the same artist wake up every day and their one thing that they did for that day was make a piece of art? But every day, even though it's the same artist, same pen, same everything, they made a different piece of art every day. And throughout the eons of time, forever, it never equaled the same art piece once. It's like this is a visual representation of the infinite potential of of something that starts out the same every time, but to be expressed completely differently every time. And there's something about that whoever created this loves and admires and can't get enough of. Consciousness wandering through the columns and admiring them, stopping every now and then to kind of deep dive into one part of the column and look at how things were different and how they're the same. So there's a lot to this, and I think I'm not going to finish this one yet and give final feedback because there's a lot to explore and unpack. I feel on different levels there's all kinds of data to keep pulling out of this, starting from the human being who initially observed some strange phenomena and then tried to process their feelings and thoughts about it by creating art. There's more to look at regarding the art on the rock face. I want to look at the beings. The beings, they almost feel like messengers. They're very neutral and timeless. And their expanse of knowledge their mind works different than my mind as a human being. Their mind is, when I think of their mind, I just see the entire universe, like how a sphere could expand outward in all directions. That's how their mind works. Not like my mind, which is linear from like here to there with a line, and then I compare the 2 points. Their mind is like every possible point starting from the point of origin outward. I don't even know how to describe that, but I'm going to take a little break. This is getting so big I don't really even know how to process it myself. But there's like the really real tangible part of it, and then there's like the spiritual structure of how things are working. And there's a connection between the two. Like it starts with the individual who made the piece of art because they saw something that they didn't quite understand. The beings who inspired the individual who showed up, and their connection to an understanding of everything. I'm going to take a break. So just a quick update. This target is so interesting. I made a point to do an extended remote viewing session wherein that stage between being awake and being asleep. It's sort of a liminal space, hypnagogic space where you're right on the cusp of falling asleep. And as I was doing that, the first image I saw was of a white spiral, but I was looking at it from the perspective of being on the ground, looking forward. Think of like maybe a hedge maze, and you're about to walk through it, except replace the hedge maze with a spiral that's sort of made of like a white material. The second image that I got was this sort of L shape. It was an L, but it also had like an interesting flourish at the top and the bottom edge. Maybe I would call it a letter, but it was white as well, and it kind of zoomed up towards me in that liminal state. I don't know, it was like the letter L, but also not. And then finally, the last one I got during the ERV session was a boulder or multiple boulders sort of rolling and tumbling down together, like a herd of boulders, or like not an avalanche, but like a rock slide a little bit. So that was interesting, but this specific sort of weird spirally shape following the boulders is what I noticed. And finally, I also noticed during the ERV session, I kept getting this sort of perfect 90-degree angle. And I believe earlier back I had mentioned I saw like a large sort of square boulder resting atop a perch. But this is significant, and I don't know if this ties into the strange L shape, but like a perfect 90-degree boulder or rock, or at least two faces of it, or two edges rather, are flat and at 90 degrees. And then the rest can be sort of like natural stone, sort of weird shape. But this cutout in a rock is significant somehow. Hey guys, so one more quick update here. I think that this square thing is part of a map, and I think it's in the upper right corner on the page of the map. So Carl, is there a map where, I don't know what it would be, but maybe like there's a square coordinate or some sort of a, where lines intersect to create a perfect 90-degree connecting point in the upper right corner of a map? Moreover, this spot, in my mind's eye, it's a topographic map, and this spot, this area, is important. One could say that it's inverted. It's almost like a pyramid shape, but instead of going up and down, it's going down into the ground, like a depression in the ground, in the earth, with a hard 90-degree angle here. I don't know what the rest looks like. It doesn't really matter much to me in my mind's eye, but in a map, that spot, that designates something where lines intersect. This is important. So this next part is more of a passive approach to the remote viewing of target 7294. Instead of actively seeking images or willing anything, I'm just sitting here and allowing anything to come in that wants to, whether it does or not. So I'm seeing like a square shape in the sky. But you can only tell it's there by the edges of the square. The inside of the square and the outside are the same color of the sky. This is a memory, and I'm looking up at this square. And there's a zooming effect when my perception, when I'm looking up at it, it's like I zoom straight into it. I don't know what that is. Getting a visual of looking down from the square shape in the sky. So this is the perception from it. Seeing a person down on the ground. But as I'm zooming out, away from him, his world kind of becomes this bubble. Like it's like reality, reality, reality. And that bubble goes over here, and then I can focus on the next bubble in my perception and bring that into my awareness. So that's from the perspective of the square in the sky. And I feel like when someone like me, like a human who would look up and see just the very, very edge of the square in the sky, I do so because there's a purpose behind the edges being shown in that moment. There's a function that occurs between me and it and me, where when I'm perceiving it, it's like I get zoomed into it. It's interesting because the first part was me seeing it from the perspective of a human being, and then the other part was me seeing it from the perspective of the square thing. Okay. Now there's this lime-colored light. High contrast, almost like laser light. In the shape of a dot or like a ball. I'm going to go into it. Let's see. Seven, two, nine. Vast green interior warehouse type building, but it's not a warehouse, it's just huge. Everything is illuminated by this lime green color. The walls themselves kind of radiate this like lime green color. 7294. Move to something interesting within this space. So kinesthetically, there's this, I've moved to a space within it. I feel like I'm underground, and within this space, this lime, I know this sounds nuts, within this lime square-shaped warehouse area that's illuminated by lime green, there's something in it that pulls me, like a gravity change, like it's intense, like I go to the gravity. 7294. Energetic. This feels like a source of energy with gravity. 7294. This is something that just runs on its own. Man, like, intelligently made. I'm seeing a sphere within a cube. Move to a higher resolution of sphere cube. 7294. Interesting. So I'm seeing there is a sphere. The sphere is like electrically charged differently than the square that it resides within. Like when you think of like if you ever get a static shock, you know, it's windy outside, or you're scuffing your feet on the carpet and you like touch your nose and you zap yourself. It's like that, but huge oodles and oodles and oodles and oodles and oodles and oodles and oodles of that process, like compounded between the sphere and the square, and the gap between are the firings of energy, and they're just random impulses scattered all around the sphere into the box, like bug zapper, but times a million with an exponent. Target 7294. There's connection between, I'm going to call it the bug zapper, between the zapper and other zappers. There is connection. There is connection, in quote. In quotes. 7294. Hello? Is anyone here? I'd like to communicate. Is there an intelligence that can communicate with me here? 7294. Hello? I'm only an observer. I'm here neutrally. Curiosity. To honor. With love. No ill intent. I just feel like a million eyes just landed on me in every direction. I feel very observed. My intention is curiosity, exploration, love. No harm meant. 7294. Just seeking knowledge. Using the knowledge for the benefit of curiosity. What is this place? I'm getting a visual of lots of like black kind of spiky things all around me. They're not scary, they're just... It's like each of them is intelligent and observing and unique. And they're all connected. Carl, where did you send me? 7294. Moving within the space. The walls are no longer that lime green. There's a white sort of... I'm moving through like a white squarish tunnel with paneling. Where are we going? 7294. Okay, I see you. Hello. I come in peace. If I'm intruding, I will happily leave. I'm done. All done. Okay. I am leaving. I am leaving and I am done. Thank you. Thank you for the time that I had here. I appreciate it. You are intelligent enough to know that with this information, I disseminate it only by way of to honor this space and for the betterment of all. Thank you. I'm grateful. Goodbye. That was crazy. I'm just going to straight up draw what I saw. So it was like a face. So this was its skull. These are the eyes. I know it seems very featureless, but the face that was at the end of that tunnel that booted me out looked like this, and its skin was kind of like the skin on E.T. It was brown and kind of slick. I'm so small compared to whatever that thing was. The second that it decided, there was like a wall of just energy that just zoomed right into me, and I was out. It kicked me the hell out. Carl, where did you send me? I'm going to take a break. I think I'm going to end this now, especially after the way that ended. I don't feel like it's my right to proceed any further. I don't feel like I have the ranking or qualification or really the right to keep moving forward on this. I received that loud and clear that it's time to stop, so I'm stopping. So in summary, what is this that I saw? It's kind of multi-layered, and it began with an experience from a human being observing something. And I feel like what they tried to, convey in the art that they made, out of all the parts of this, the specific art that they made, I feel the least accurate on regarding the shape of it. Like at first it started out with sort of like that circular shape that was kind of dotted, and then evolved into like the top there, like that weird kind of headdress. I feel the least accurate about that part. I feel like the symbolism within it is something more that I was picking up on. I feel like the message of this space and the interaction between the human being and the others that came are the part that I picked up on the strongest. And it's funny with remote viewing, my mind, I get bored quickly, so my subconscious tends to remote view the shiniest object in the place, or the most interesting thing. And so in summary, I feel like this was an event that occurred for a human being who was not expecting it. They did their best to process what they saw, which they did not entirely understand. The beings that came were quite neutral. If anything, they felt more like farmers, or like not even teachers. They were that neutral. They just sort of were, I would call them spirits, but they were intelligent, and they had not lived the way that we live, so something else. And they were using light to create this sort of emanating, at first it looked like dreadlocks that were kind of red and white, but then later felt more like it was actually light. From there we go through this cycle. I feel like, to answer your first question, Carl, whatever your question was, the answer is it's a process or a cycle, and it keeps repeating. There's a delicate balance to it. The process is observed. It is the embodiment of consciousness. It is an old process. It is a form of farming or gathering. I don't know if that means with tangible things or something else. Intracellular communication. I think something changes in us on a intercellular basis based upon our place in that process or cycle. And timelessness, repeating, revered. And then the answer to your second question, it's interesting. When I was doing my extended remote viewing session, I was seeing that visual again of the water droplet falling down the well or the abyss, and remembering the importance is not how quickly that well or abyss fills up with each water droplet, but the experience of each droplet. And as I was falling asleep, my mind kind of zoomed in on the droplet. The droplet is symbolic for each of our own lives. And what happens And that timelessness, when the water droplet is falling and living, is the whole point of everything. And that the columns that I later saw are not so much filled up by each drop of consciousness. They are, but it's each individual experience of consciousness that fills it up. And whatever these beings were that visited this man in the rock canyon are aware of this, and they can zoom out of our reality and zoom into the larger reality where these like microscopic slides of reality exist in space, and they can just sort of weave and walk in between them and admire them and use them for some greater purpose. And then finally, all of the symbolism that came in my extended remote viewing session, a lot of these were symbols that were initially seen, such as the square shape, the spiral. So final feedback, I'm going to say that this is a place in a desert with lots of rocks and boulders, possibly a canyon, with a broad, sweeping panoramic overlook. There's a ridge line where the man, probably an indigenous person to America, that's a hard guess, but I'm guessing, that's how it feels, was looking up above this ridge line. I know that there's a ridge because of the slight echo that I made when I was clapping in my mind. He looked up at the ridge, this triangle thing came up from above it. He was looking up, saw lights from it. It goes black. Next thing I know, I'm standing on the ground, probably facing a different direction, not towards the ridge because it was open again, like I was at the bottom of a dry creek bed in a canyon. And on one side or the other is this ridge or ridges. I think there's just one side with a ridge because the rest was this panoramic view that was more open. Anyway, he's standing there. Three beings walk towards him. They're emanating light, which was beautiful. This was not scary. And one of them was holding like a light. And as the man gazed at the light, he became very calm. The structure with the lime green light is underground, is old. And when I say old, I mean beyond what you would define as old. Ancient would be another word. Timeless even. Anyway, under the ground, self-powering, there's something that's generating. It's something that I can't quite explain or comprehend, but it simultaneously pulls you in with like a gravity, but it's creating a static electric field that was very strong. So gravity and static electricity there's some interplay there. And there's also a connection to other sites that do this too, that are under the ground. This was made intelligently. This was made intentionally. I feel like whatever this energy creating mechanism was under the ground is also not self-aware, but like there's an artificial intelligence component to it. It's self-governing, self-sustaining, self-checking, self-quality control checking, so to speak. And then the being that was in another branch of that tunnel, it wasn't bad, but it had made up its mind. This viewer who is here, it's time for it to go. And outside of my own control, I was gone. I was kicked out of there. It was like you ever seen the layers of a skateboard? It was like a multi-layered energetic wall that just rushed into me and like booted me out. So yeah, those are my final thoughts. I can't wait to hear where you sent me. And, it'll be interesting. This is great practice. If I'm totally wrong, I view remote viewing and success in remote viewing and life as sort of pulling on a chain. And a chain is made up of thousands of links, right? And some of those links are wrong, but they're practice. And when you make mistakes, inevitably, if you keep pulling, even through the links where you made a mistake, you pull to the links where you have a lot of fun. I appreciate you sending me out to this target. Please tell me, what the hell is this place? So this will be the second and final feedback that I give about this target. I thought I was completely done when I finished this morning. But after I was kind of locked out by that being, I couldn't help myself, and I tried to go back. And I have never had a remote viewing target be as difficult to access as this one has now become. So I tried doing extended remote viewing, which is as you're falling asleep in that liminal space between awake and asleep, accessing it, and I just couldn't. And finally, I just got this gut intuition that I'm acting dishonorably by continuing to try to kind of knock on the door and get in. So I said, you know what, I'm sorry, and I apologized, and I owned up to being dishonorable for continuing to try to knock on the door and get in. And wouldn't you know it, that was the magic key. After that, the visual that I got was a little boy playing in some sand, and he had a very round face, short black hair, and he was just happily playing in the sand. Not dirt, sand. It was like orangish kind of sand. And I got the word Paiute. Not the spelling of it, just the, I don't know how to convey that, but it was like the feeling of it, and the feeling was Paiute. So I'm going to have to look that up. It sounds familiar. It sounds indigenous, but I'm not sure. So that's it. Also, last thing, with all the different parts of this target, I'm worried that there's a high amount of transference. Transference being my mind not sticking to one target. So I can't wait to see the actual results and see what it was that was viewed. I hope my mind wasn't skipping around different targets. I hope this is all one thing. I also wanted to say it's become clear to me now intuitively that the indigenous peoples of this region are sort of the start of whatever the process is that I was talking about. Like when a cycle begins again and starts anew, indigenous people are always step one of whatever this process is. And then from there it goes, and life takes other turns, but step one is always these people. And there's some sort of a kinship, a connection, and a love and an honor between the indigenous people and this extremely old and advanced group of beings. I felt nothing but neutrality from them, but between them and indigenous peoples, there's a depth there. There's a sort of camaraderie or respect, because the indigenous peoples are always step one of whatever this process is when it begins to unfold. Thank you. So this is all really good feedback, and I'm going to use it to practice with. Question 1, what was there under the meadow? And question 2, what were they doing and why? Question 1, my answer was about a process or cycle, something recurring over and over again. And question 2 was more about something under the ground, something where water was falling through a cavern. And then you can see the beginnings of sort of the esoteric stuff, the white columns that Carl actually addresses in his previous videos. So I wanted to go over this. It's interesting. I feel like I know that with my own remote viewing, something that I need to improve on is my mind really likes to go to the shiny things. I remember I was remote viewing the church at Notre Dame once, and I didn't even know I was in a church. All I wanted to do was hang out in this multicolored rainbow light that was coming through these stained glass windows, and that was literally all I could see, that and the smell of old dusty air. So this is really good feedback for me. I need to figure out, I'm self-taught. I don't have a mentor. I don't have a trainer. So, I don't know how I'm going to work through this, but I need to get better at isolating my subconscious to the actual thing that the tasker wants me to look at, instead of, my mind went straight. I mean, you saw it. I got bored just sitting in the desert looking around at shrubs and trees, and I went down into it. So it's interesting. So my final results for question 1, I'm going to say the answer to his question of who are these men? Nope, didn't answer it at all. I straight up went to the esoteric stuff. Question 2, what's under the ground in that meadow on Mount Wilson Ranch? That I feel like I got closer to. But again, it was more esoteric, more the spiritual side of things. I'm not a big people person. I love people, but I don't like them very much. And so my mind doesn't, also I'm on the spectrum. My mind as a remote viewer does not tend to jump to relational aspects of targets, people, things like that. I'm more observant of the mechanics of things, the infrastructure, colors, things that inspire me or move me on an emotional level. So this is really interesting. And looking at the entire remote viewing session, it's interesting what I did pick up on, that there was an indigenous person who had an experience that was dreamlike to them. They were having a hard time processing it. It was so overwhelming. I think there was some transference when I saw the 3 beings. I'm wondering if I was actually seeing 3 beings coming from a craft that met that individual, or if that was similar to the drawing that Carl showed in his previous video of the 3 versions of oneself that is often met in that space. I think child self, current, and future. Carl, I might be wrong on that, but anyway, the point of this video is I do this with all of my feedback with remote viewing, to retrain my subconscious on what it hit and what it didn't hit and where I'd like it to go. So if I'm rambling, it's kind of for my own sake. But the funny thing is, out of all of this, the petroglyph part I was the least sure of. Yet, ironically, the very esoteric stuff, like the white columns with slices of data in them, of time and consciousness, I was very hesitant to share that, because I was like, okay, this is just my imagination. This is so wackadoo and out there. I don't even know where to go with it. But yeah, so as far as my subconscious goes, that's great that I included that. And I think next time when I remote view, there's a special feeling I get. Edward Rhein, go check him out, by the way. He's on the other platform that has longer videos. Edward Rhein, Rioorden. Excellent remote viewer. I highly look up to him. He waits until he feels the link between himself and the target, which makes sense. Evidential mediums also do that. They're not just gonna, start saying anything that comes into mind. They literally wait until there's a connection, and it's like a tipping point. They're like, aha, there it is. And that happened with me in this session. And I'm looking back at my notes, and I'm realizing that everything after that point, as of that point and after, the accuracy was just a lot more on target. So next time, I'm going to wait till I feel that. And it's a unique thing. If anyone else is watching this and is learning about remote viewing or practicing, it's hard to describe. If you're ever receiving a visual like a flash, and it's highly detailed and lasts more than a second, it's probably not, like if you're a beginner like me, I've only been doing this for 3 years. It's probably not accurate. It's probably your imagination, right? But what I know, my tipping point of connection, is I will get an image, and it's almost as if it's being pulled out of like the darkness. And it's different from an imagining, because it's ill-defined. The edges are not clear. It's more of an impulse, like a feeling. Oftentimes it comes as symbols that represent something else, so it's not the literal thing. And again, because I'm neurodivergent and I'm on the spectrum, my own mind has a hard time differentiating between, well, is the symbol literal or is it a symbol? So that's a second thing, subconscious, that I need to work on programming. Subconscious needs to work on differentiating between symbolism and the actual thing. So that's what I'm going to work on. I appreciate everyone watching all of this. It was so much fun. Carl, thank you for tasking me. I can't wait to work with you again in the future. And if there's anything that anyone wants to learn about remote viewing, I got started through Daz Smith's website. That's DAZ, remoteviewed.com. He has a free PDF. You can Google it. It's a little tough to find on his site, so maybe go to Google first and type Flow, Flow, PDF, and that's his entire process of remote viewing. It's free. You can download it and use it at your leisure. Bye, guys. Thanks.